Hello, and welcome to the People Grow Places podcast, where we explore the virtuous circle of people, growth, and place. Brought to you by Grow Places and hosted by our founder, Tom Larsson. Today, we have a special episode recorded on site at the Truman Brewery in East London, where we are excited to work in partnership with the Truman Brewery and local people in Brick Lane, Spitalfields, and Bangortown.
So we're here at the Truman Brewery in Brick Lane in East London. We're sitting in Cafe 1001 because true spring fashion, it's raining outside. And we're here with Alex and with Peter from Volterra. Hi guys, welcome.
Hello. Hello.
And we've got Tom, the development manager here from Grow Places. So Alex, tell me a little bit about your involvement in the role. Who are you? How are you getting involved in this project?
So great. Thanks for having us, first of all. So I'm Alex O'Byrne. I'm partner of Volterra Partners, and we're a socioeconomic consultancy. So what we do is look at the social, health, economic impacts of major development and infrastructure. So on this project, we are looking at what the economic impact's going to be, how to support local benefits, what the need for commercial spaces around here and why it needs to be in this, why here, why Brick Lane, and thinking about how we can sort of build some community wealth around here.
I'm Peter Reddy. I've worked with Alex for a few years now, and our background is really using economic theory to help think about different problems locally. So about specifically to this project, it's about how you can use the principles of economics and how you can help understand local issues through those and use them to fuel what we can build into future development, like Alex is saying.
Great. Can you talk to me a bit about the ecosystem, sort of the economic ecosystem we have here, specifically at Truman Brewery? A bit about East London, whether it's Tower Hamlets or whether it's just on site itself. Is there anything particularly special about this place?
So I guess specifically Tower Hamlets is quite an interesting borough because it's just a complete one part of it's so different. You have the Isle of Dogs on one side, which is Canary Wharf, everyone knows it's sort of finance capital. And then obviously this part is a lot more the sort of city fringe, with a variety of different places. But coming in hyper-local here, it's one of the most diverse parts of, I guess, London and the UK, really. There's massive, like, Bangladesh population. Population's very young. There's a real variety of people in this location. It's very diverse, and specifically just in this ward where we are now, the Bangortown Spitalfields ward. It's very diverse.
And then, so that it's that mix of people helps breeds the community of businesses that are then on site as well. So then what's evolved over time here on the estates has been a mix of spaces and the way that they're managed that's brought in clusters of new, young, creative businesses especially, but also a wider mix of retail and leisure uses and events and all the different bits that come with them. And their on-site now is a real, we call it an ecosystem in the project team, but I think it probably does represent that quite well, where it's evolved out of from 30 years ago, where the site was the brewery site as it stood, and now it's brought into the new workspaces that brought the businesses in. And then today it stands as the heart of one of the largest hubs of creative activity, I think, in East London and in the city fringe area, which has been lost dramatically over time. So the types of businesses that need workspace struggling to find it in the centre of London, especially the creative ones. So sites like this are really important for helping to drive activity, and that feel of being together as part of a community is what's been at the heart of this and what we're trying to foster through the new developments coming forward as well.
So talk to me, maybe Tom, about what Peter and Alex are saying, the clusters and the need for commercial development has driven the brief from you as the development manager as well. What have you seen that's really important to deliver here?
Yeah, no, I agree with what the guys are saying, to be honest. And clustering is really, really important. It's kind of a natural thing that happens. You know, you get like-minded people come together, and that breeds a kind of ecosystem around that, whether that's small, medium, large businesses, or whether that's events or leisure activities that kind of cluster to that. And I think Truman's definitely a UK, but if not a European and a world example of that. You know, tourists come here to visit Truman as part of Brick Lane. And that vibrancy, that vitality is so unique here, but it is fragile. It's something that Truman themselves have been very mindful of And even the notion of doing a kind of master plan in inverted commas for the project, which we are doing here, is very much through a lens of, okay, it's quite a loose master plan that allows people to basically take that on and to evolve that and to bring life to that over time. And we're not trying to control every aspect of that. And I think that element of a kind of an ecosystem that's natural, that can grow, that can change, but that is fragile is really important. And then you could kind of extrapolate that actually to the Brick Lane Bangortown ward that we're in. The creativity, the vibrancy along Brick Lane, the diversity of businesses, the diversity of trade, the diversity of cultures is what makes it really unique. And what we're trying to do here is to tread a very careful line between something that comes forward in a growth mindset, that is about progress, that is about development, but that does that in a way that's very authentic, and that does it in a way that hopefully is very respectful about some of the physical, but also some of the maybe the emotional, cultural, psychological aspects of a place that are less tangible.
Psychological. How do you discover that, and how do you then interpret that in economic terms or through an economic lens? What does that look like?
I think it's been one of the challenges for us is trying to sort of articulate that ecosystem, because everyone people understand the area, know, and you just come here and you know that there is this cluster of business exciting, you can sort of feel it, but I guess trying to demonstrate that is not so easy. So we've been, I guess, trying to think about stuff about what Truman estates do themselves to offer flexible leases and stuff, and how long the business has been here is like a key indicator of like how attractive it is, I guess. But then I sort of think about what are the wider benefits of the actual clustering. It's like clusters now drive like economic growth all over the world. Really, they're really important. So like if you think about some of the main areas of growth in the UK, it's like the financial services in the city. There's clusters of these similar businesses that come together and they collaborate, they learn from each other, they use the same resources and make the area around it prosperous as well. So I guess it's one challenge for us has been trying to think about how we articulate and make it clear to the planning authority and the local community how actually important it is for the area itself.
So can we get into the details maybe about what challenges you're finding, and then how you're working together to find solutions, working with the existing community, and then what kind of projections are you thinking there will be in the future, and who will be here, who will be using this space, and how do the people who are here still, how do they translate into that future vision as well? Is that part of the economic sort of calculation?
One of the big challenges that we've been brought in to help think about is how we best reflect the local needs in terms of economic priorities of the local communities in the future development that's going to be brought forward on site. So it's about reflecting what it is that people are struggling with locally, or what are the opportunities that we can contribute to addressing existing issues through the proposed development, and then tailoring the sorts of things that we bring forward to address those issues on site and off site and in whatever other ways may be possible. So things like we were originally thinking about how we develop a community wealth building agenda on site to a group of people that have significantly lower outcomes than most of London. Levels of poverty are relatively high, levels of destitution are quite high locally. So it's about what we can do on site to address that bit that doesn't come out when you just look at a broad brush in the whole of the area.
Yeah, and this is the really difficult stuff, frankly.
Yeah.
Difficult stuff to approach, but a project of, development of any scale, but particularly something of this scale, for such a key anchor sort of institution, if you want to call it that, within the ward, is really important. But we're not sat here saying we've got the answers to that, because some of that is about the physical elements of space, which, the types of uses, the scale of the buildings, the types of spaces, how open, accessible a place feels. But lots of that is, frankly, got not much to do with the buildings at all. It's about the programming, it's about the outreach, it's about the networks within the community. And in a community like this, if you take the broader sense of it within the Spitalfields of Bangortown, it's I've been working here for a couple of years now, and I'm sort of just very, very slowly trying to understand the dynamics there, Truman have been here for 35 years and have a much deeper understanding, much more local understanding of that, and other elements of the community, been here through generations. And I think trying to sort of not feel like we have the answers, not feel like we can walk in other people's shoes, but equally try to empathize with people and try to kind of understand that. So the work that the guys are doing, kind of sort of big picture looking down, there's that kind of macroeconomic piece, but then there's also the much more on the ground kind of socioeconomic piece kind of coming up about connections and networks that we're trying to approach through consultation, trying to approach through various kind of agendas that we've got with local stakeholders and organisations. But it's not easy. It's not an easy challenge, is it, to take something from theory to practice, really?
So it's kind of about community wealth building. Does that feel right? Is that sort of where you're aiming for, or can you talk to me a bit about that?
I think it's something that a term we're picking up on a bit, because it's something that's sort of gaining a bit of like traction, I guess, in the development industry is community wealth building. I guess the idea is broadly that it comes from Preston originally in the UK, and it was now referred to as the Preston Law. And the idea was that they were quite a struggling economy, and they wanted to sort of leverage what they have locally and try and keep, I guess, the wealth locally a bit more. So the idea is there was work in the public sector there. The council wanted to procure locally. They wanted to make sure the local jobs and skills opportunities, people were being paid a fair wage, there was good work. And that sort of model worked fairly well there, and has actually gone quite global in terms of it. And this is the idea of community wealth building that Tower Hamlets have now picked up as one of their key priorities. But I guess there's not loads of detail about how Tower Hamlets want it to be delivered yet, which is quite good because it's a bit of an opportunity for us to think about what it means here. And one of the key ways it can be delivered is through so-called anchor institutions. That's places like universities and councils, but also I think Truman fits that perfectly in terms of being a major employer locally. There's an opportunity for Truman set a great example, work with partners, work with the council to think about how we procure, how local jobs are supported, how we work with education institutions and stuff like that to sort of keep a bit more wealth locally. So I guess personally I'm quite excited about like developing this community wealth building, because it feels to me quite nebulous concept at the moment that people have. It's an opportunity to actually define it and use it locally.
Is there a way that Truman will buck the trend? I mean, developers and new developments are, there's this concept of NIMBYism, and they're often sort of feared and not engaged with as highly as they ought to be. And we all in the built environment wish that, there were high levels of engagement and that people had time and passion. I mean, we've seen a lot of passion happen, across the years to kind of keep this place as it is, because it supports so many and such a diverse range of people, and no one wants that to just go away overnight. So what's special about this place from a sort of economic perspective, or the solutions that you're finding? Are there any specifics that you can give us that get you kind of
maybe
really
not from an
excited?
economic perspective, but from a social perspective,
Yeah.
there's definitely the strength of feeling locally is enormous. So this is one of the most politically active places in London, if not the whole of the country.
Yep.
And then how that is reflected in the actual economic policy making is quite important as well. So the actual makeup of the place is what is driving a lot of the new policy that's being brought forward, especially the community wealth building side of things too. But it's all about how you can capture that strength of feeling locally, and then as well as the actual objectives for change that are being brought forward out of that. So at the moment, there's a lot of consultation work that's been going on by the council, and a lot of consultation work that's been going on at Truman about how you can involve those opinions and evolve those people's feelings and characteristics into something that might move development in one way or another way. So for Truman, that might be things like, it might be the education piece, making sure that we know that people have been brought out through that strength of feeling that there's a community that's being left behind, and then saying, well, here's an opportunity we can do that. Economic policy tells us that this is the lever that we can pull to do so. So therefore, we're going to tailor this development to do that way.
Wow. And is that sort of, how does that fit into the wider piece of the design and all the sort of what you've tried to deliver, or what you'll try and deliver here? Does that influence and impact the design at all?
Yeah, no, I think it does. I think it does impact the design, but I don't think the design is the highest thing in the priority list with that. I think it's actually the more the relationships, more the people side of it than the physical building side of it. But what I would say on that point is that, Truman themselves have been here for over 35 years. Sorry, when I say Truman, I mean the current sort of stewardship of the place, and they're very long term. This isn't a speculative development where we're trying to sort of get in, get out. It's very much an owner operator model. Hence why they're working with Grow Places as a development manager to bring that development skill set. But they are an owner operator, and so they're looking for a very long term lens. And I think that does give a unique perspective. That means that hopefully the things that we're talking about now at planning stage, they don't just become very well considered planning documents that kind of go on a shelf. They actually translate into meaningful impact and value for people. But that's the glass half full aspect. I think we should be open and say that it's challenging as well. And with that history, with that legacy, comes strength of feeling, strength of relationships, which means that it isn't always as simple as someone walking in would have you kind of think it might be to kind of unlock some of these things, and that goes to everything the guys are talking about. So, I don't know, what do you guys see as the how do we turn theory into practice in a really meaningful way?
So I guess one thing that comes to mind is one of the ways they've built this ecosystem has been so effective is having sort of that flexibility of how we deal with tenants and community at the core. So from what I understand is there's lots of flexibility of tenants. They work them day to day to say, you need to expand space or you need to downgrade it. That's fine. We can accommodate that if you can't afford it for this time. There's flexibility around that, which is really important for particularly sort of creative businesses and businesses that are growing, and small businesses in particular. So I guess the issue of planning policy and stuff like that is they often want fixed answers to go into the legal agreements. You want to deliver this at this level, but being able to have that flexibility is really, really important. So like making sure that can continue, and making sure that we can continue to work with businesses and continue to work with local partners to build on opportunities, to grow where they need to take opportunities to work with stakeholders who are delivering like local jobs, opportunities and training locally. I think that's a bit of a tension sometimes in planning, that it tends to be quite fixed and structured, whereas actually what you need is to build in some flexibility. Like, for example, with like affordable workspace policy, which is quite common in London now, driven by the GLA, it's often a requirement to provide 10% of the space at, 50% discount. And the key driver for that is really to support charities and creative businesses, lots of the stuff that is already happening here without the policy. So what the issue, the ultimate potential issue with that could be that the requirement to provide it at a fixed level, at a fixed discount, where actually that flexibility is better and they're already providing affordable. So my view is there needs to be a bit more trust and flexibility sometimes to enable places to change and grow.
It can often be like someone signing a piece of paper with a contract that says this term is the baseline. But in reality, when you've got somewhere like this that has a completely different concept than what can be written down on a legal piece of paper, that is a difference between practice and theory that is really relevant.
What do you mean by a different concept? What's different here?
Like Alex was saying, for the affordable workspace, normally you would write down you go into policy and it would say you need to meet these sorts of conditions, and it might be the amount of space, it might be the sorts of fit outs, and it might be the affordability level. Whereas here you've got space that's on site that isn't in that way, in a policy sense, deemed affordable because there's no one's ticked a box on a contract that says it is. But in reality, you go to any one of these businesses and you talk to them about what they need for a space, and they would say exactly the sorts of spaces are here. It's about flexibility to upgrade and downgrade. It's about somewhere that they can go to an older building on site and pay slightly less money, or they can go to a bigger space that is slightly more expensive if they want to. It's about having that, acknowledging there are different needs in businesses rather than something that can just be put into one single line of a contract.
So less of the tick box and actually...
Yeah, going beyond the tick box is really important.
What does that mean for, like, aside from just the workspace? different uses, and not just for Truman, for the wider economy here, the other businesses that are along Brick Lane that maybe benefit from some of the economic activity that happens on Truman site.
Brick Lane at the moment there's a lot of work that's been done recently, especially through different bits of consultation. There was the Beyond Bangor piece that came out not very long ago that was goes and talks to the local business owners and says, what are your challenges that you're facing? And at the moment, the real challenge along Brick Lane is to make sure that there's a sufficient supply of space that's able to meet the Brick Lane businesses. So it might be the curry houses, and also make sure there's the scale of activity there that can keep them supported in the long term. So one of the key bits of information that came out of not only that report, but current engagement work that's ongoing from the council, is that there is now a lack of distinct nighttime pattern that goes down Brick Lane at Spitalfields. So there's a clear relationship there. You've got the Truman Brewery site that has all the different types of uses that draw people into event space. You say, whether it's rough trade records on site or all sorts, or so many of the different community spaces that can be rented out, that there's an interrelationship there where you've got businesses saying they need a specific sort of footfall and activity, and then a site that's literally next door that can deliver that activity. And it's just about unlocking those two things.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us a bit about that nighttime economy piece, because I think that's a really popular sort of concept that's happening. We need to support, nightlife, music, late night theatre, clubs, all that kind of stuff. How does that fit into the economic modelling here, and how can it be further supported with this redevelopment?
So historically this has been a really important area for the nighttime economy. It's like you come here throughout the year and it's normally quite buzzing, and like particularly at night time it has venues and bars and stuff that attracts lots of particularly young people. It's quite an exciting area, but I think looking into some of the evidence, some of that is an indication that some of the nighttime uses have sort of reduced demand quite a bit, and it's gotten a bit quieter, particularly following COVID, when obviously lots of businesses struggled to sort of recover through that. So I guess economically it's really important to make sure, I guess, people spend here throughout the day, and attracting people throughout the whole day is really important to deliver that. But I guess it's just the in terms of like the vitality of the area, it's making sure that there's all different uses which attract different people throughout the day, from workers going to cafes, from clubs and night uses and curry houses, all sorts of uses that make sure it's vibrant and safe and attractive place to be, really.
Yeah.
And I wonder, maybe summarising where that fits into Tom's point about what's the local economic impact, is the economic activity that's unlocked by the site is one part of that. Then the second part of that is about the extra benefits of what is happening at the businesses that can benefit local people. So it might be the employment opportunities that are on in the different businesses. Say, the creative industries are awash with different training programs and mentorship programs and apprenticeship programs that can directly target some of the people that have challenges at the moment finding employment and struggling labour market outcomes. And then another point about that is how you can use the supply chain opportunities, the actual links between businesses. So there's a piece on economic activity on site, and then there's a piece on how you can link the businesses on site better to the local community and different residents as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also think it all ties into kind of like the cultural significance of Brick Lane and what that does to visitor numbers.
Yeah.
Because the visitor numbers, the footfall, as well as the kind of the regular population of workers, of residents, that transient population is really, really important to the vitality of the place, to the significance of it, and to the maybe overall brand of the place, which maybe doesn't sound quite right, but I think you know what I'm saying.
The sense of identity.
Yeah, sense of identity. Yeah.
And your point earlier about it being fragile is an important one, because it's based on such a sort of the idea that there's so many small businesses attracted here, and it has that all the amenities around it that attract and make it a place that people want to work. So this is the issue. Some places in London, a place like Canary Wharf, are getting less attractive in some measures at the moment, because they don't have that amenity in the culture, which is hard to create from scratch. It sort of just emerges a bit. So that making sure that continues is really important to keep the sort of identity of the area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
what about how does Truman? Is it symbolic of anything that's happening in London in the wider scale? I mean, I know we're desperate for housing, but that has a lot of issues, planning policy and government sort of understanding the nuance of how we have to manage and negotiate the built environment. People want housing here. Is there a sort of, how do we discuss that in a sort of sensible way where actually, would housing be beneficial here, or does it need to be about propping up the nighttime economy and making sure that people can sleep at night, if people are drinking on the streets or going clubbing and any, does that argument come into it at all? The sort of the pressure from the top, as it were?
We have, might be good to frame that in terms of the wider city fringe policy that's in place at the moment is the promotion of commercial. And the reason it's the promotion of commercial is because the commercial has faced a significant pressure from residential. Residential is the massive demand across East London, whole of Central London as well. So the question is not, is residential beneficial on site? Yes, residential in Central London will be beneficial anywhere you put it. It's the question of how to balance that. Where do you put it? And where can you put that best that has a relationship with businesses? So this site has I think the key conclusion to come away is this site has the background, it has the creative business cluster that's going on. We can bring in residential onto that in a sensitive way that doesn't disrupt that. And we need to bring in new businesses on site into a way that can help it address the needs of more businesses in the future. So it's about finding that balance between residential and commercial and other uses as well.
What are you imagining that this place is going to look like in, how long are we talking? 5-10 years time?
Yeah, so, well, from my perspective, I think the success of success of lots of place schemes, but particularly of this one, is the fact that you never feel like it's changed, but then you also feel like it's changed, if that makes sense. It's a gradual thing. This isn't one day it's like it is now, the next day it's a completely different place. That would be a failure. So that goes to this kind of fragility of the place thing. We should be growing it, we should be adding to it, but in a way that feels almost sort of second nature and authentic to the place and to people's lives, and just kind of improves people's quality of life along the way. And it is a journey. The physical aspect of the buildings will take, as you mentioned, over the next 5+ years. But actually, that's just the beginning. Then there's the occupation of the spaces. Then there's how those spaces change, how they evolve over time. We're sat in Cafe 1001, which is in a building that's over 100 years old, that was built as a warehouse for a brewery, that's now a cafe and record shop, and we're sitting here filming in it. And that kind of vibrancy is what makes places really successful. And Truman are a great example of that. They are fortunate insofar as they're long term. They're really long term. They take a very considered approach to that. I say fortunate, it's also by design. But what that does allow is it allows some of these different uses to happen. And if I think then the key is then how does Truman become a site for a more diverse community? So yes, the focus is very much about preserving the creative cluster here and all of the vibrancy and the benefits that come with that. But we should also be honest and say that is for a demographic of people. And this project is also about how do we kind of open up the site? How do we make it a place for a local mother and baby on a Saturday morning to walk through, maybe to get a coffee, but maybe not to spend any money, just to sit underneath a tree and take in the neighbourhood. So we've got quite a high bar on a number of different criteria here, but I think it's trying to do that in a way that preserves and enhances what is unique about this place and grows that in a way that is additive to the place as a whole, really. So yes, residential, yes, commercial, yes, open space, yes, places you can buy things, yes, places where you can just come and not consume.
No, I think I completely agree, because I think that's the really important aspect of really trying to understand the area itself. So we've been working with Publica, who are sort of design consultants, and they're fantastic, and they have a really good understanding of what sort of community facilities, what cultural facilities are nearby. We've been working really close to them to add the sort of data on top of that to say this is what the local population is, this is the demographic split, this is the ethnic makeup, this is how they use the area, this types of jobs. And that sort of combined understanding of the area is a really good base to then sort of say, this is what's missing. Public have done some great work on that, saying this is what community facilities are missing. And again, I think that helps what we were saying earlier about making sure there's lots of stuff throughout the day, so it is a dynamic area because people are coming with their kids to go to the park, or they're coming to go to a gig, or they're coming to a community facility. And so understanding what's missing and what the area needs is the teams, and Tom's been really pushing it, what I understand that evidence base underpins all that work.
Can you talk a bit more about the details? What is missing, and how's that going to be delivered?
So
Tough question.
yeah. I think public has worked quite strong on that in terms of the mix of community facilities that's required. I think what they've shown is that there's a few gaps, and having sort of flexible spaces that could potentially be used for a few different things is one strong way to potentially resolve that. And I think that's part of the way the design is going, but also places that can be used for free or be used by anyone is another important part of their work and how we're thinking about it. Not just spaces where you need to spend, it's sort of these third spaces where people can just spend time without any pressure, and it's sort of different groups, different types of people. So it's thinking about those spaces that are not just for one certain type of people, your sort of hipster coffee shops, it's sort of the spaces that could attract all different types of people and different ages and different cultures and stuff like that is the challenge. And making sure that's flexible enough so it can change over time as well.
Acknowledging that we don't have, so like Tom said, we don't have the answers to things like this. So it may be that we don't know what is missing in 5 years' time, which is this building or where this whole site won't be built out until the late 2030s. Yep. So it's about making sure that you have the spaces that can respond to what people will need in 10, 15 years' time. So
how can you use sort of economic model? Do you model that on sort of how do you do social value, or how can you measure that now for the future?
So I guess the way we tend to think about social value is a bit different to the sort of standard measurement frameworks. And I guess we think about in the sense of what the benefit can be for the communities, in simple terms. But I guess it's sort of saying within the site and beyond the red line itself, how does the development engage with the area, and think about what we can commit to that wouldn't normally be required, what's additional, and what's sort of relevant to the development. So, and leveraging the strengths of the development itself too. So I think there's lots of ways you could potentially commit to social value in developments I've seen, which don't necessarily relate to the development itself. So here there's a big strength is that sort of creative aspect. So I think that's a key aspect of how we think social value should be delivered, is in terms of make sure you work with schools, and that the mission of like creating a purpose through the arts is a core part of that, because that leverages the strengths of the space itself. So I think that's a really important part of delivering that social value, is building on your existing strengths rather than trying to measure something from nothing. Okay.
Are there any other questions that the audience would, any other things that the audience should know at this stage?
You guys?
I think there's probably maybe one piece that we've not touched. So on the creative cluster piece that we talked about, quite a lot of detail on what the site is. The real motivator for what we now need is the missing link is extra space for artists. So the standard relationship that's happened in London over the last few years is that we've had artists move into workspace, gentrify a neighbourhood, get priced out of a neighbourhood, and then have to move outside of the centre of London first, then to Shoreditch, then to further away, then further away, then further away. And so the final, back to the point about what's missing that can help be delivered on site, I think there's another point that is about how do we meet the needs of the artist community in the future as well. So it's about the local community, it's about the artist community, it's about what will the users be on site. And that's been, I think, central to the whole master plan, the whole scheme that's been brought forward as well.
And what about generational considerations? I mean, you mentioned that there's a lot of young people here from certain, backgrounds. Is that a specific cluster? I think you used the word. Does that factor into the future? Because that is the future, isn't it? Whoever's young now is going to be, you want to kind of keep them here, or do you not want to keep them here? What's the game plan with that?
There's a real wealth of young people that's around here. There's a real wealth of talent and educational opportunities. And you've got the site which unlocks business opportunities. So it's about how do you take the young people of today that are local people, have a variety of different skills, and how do you use the site opportunities with the ecosystem that we talked about with the different businesses to generate future change where they come forward in 20 years and say, actually, I'm going to start my own tech business, or I'm going to start my own creative music agency or recording studio, or whatever it may be, that they have the skills to do that and the space and facilities to do that as well.
That could happen locally at Truman.
And that is exactly what Truman, in my opinion, I think that's exactly what Truman is about. I don't know if that's fair.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it brings you back to all of the stuff that isn't strictly about the physical aspects of the place, but is very much reinforced by that, because that you could draw a line around the Truman Brewery, and you could speak to certain members of the local community, particularly Bangladeshi community, and they would say, well, okay, well that bit's just not for me. I'd kind of go round it. I'd never go through it. There's nothing there for me, and that's not about the buildings. That's in part about the spatial relationships, about the fact it's not active, and what our project's doing is helping to open up that. But the physical opening up is only part of that. It's then much more about, outreach. It's much more about programming. It's much more about that sort of almost that intention, really, to create something that feels open. And that is again, I say it sounds easy to do. It's not easy to do. There's a number of reasons why things are the way they are, but that's the intention, and I think that's the stuff that we can't necessarily control. But all we can do at the moment is have the right intentions, and I think that is from the owner operator perspective, from our perspective, from the team, it's something that we are thinking about, talking about through the consultation, but very eyes open to the fact that that has to be something that just happens naturally over time, with kind of step by step little moves, building trust, building engagement, building awareness, so that someone in a local school not only feels like they can come here, but that they feel like there's something for them. And time will tell as to how that transpires over time, really, not just for Truman, but for the place and the neighbourhood as a whole. And it's a challenge that all places, all neighbourhoods have, really, but I would say it's probably it's heightened here. Yeah.
So I think I completely agree. Because I think we're trying to think of a framework so it enables that flexibility to deliver that. And one example is this idea of a sort of social value coordinator. I'm not sure the exact name yet, but it will be a sort of potentially a dedicated role, maybe part-time role, and they would work with the end tenants. And with the issue, we don't know who they'll be yet. So that again, it's trying to build that flexibility to work with those end tenants to sort of say, and they'll have a really good relationship with the local community as well. And they'll say, this is what jobs are required at the moment. Here's what's on offer. These are the vacancies that we have. Here's the local schools, and this is particularly what sort of curriculum support they might be required, or sort of here's we know they're having a open day today. Could you come and speak to it and outreach and tell them about what's going on? So I guess it's that potentially that dedicated role could be really important for delivering some of the outcomes and making sure that they're aware and the tenants are aware and everyone in the building is aware of what's going on and how you can work with the community.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you, Alex and Peter. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
It's been really enlightening. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, no worries.
Good to learn all
Thanks
about
for all
it.
your efforts, as always.
Thank you for listening to the Grow Places podcast. For more information, visit growplaces.com and follow us at We Grow Places across all social channels. See you next time.